Hello and welcome back to the Guns on Pegs podcast. My name is George Brown and I'm the editor at Guns on Pegs and The Game Card. I'm joined as usual by Chris Horn, managing director of Guns on Pegs. Chris, when this goes out, it's going to be the partridge season. We're recording at the end of August, but this will go out at the beginning of September.
Very exciting, isn't it? Have you seen any?
Well, we've got a few wild birds on the farm. You know, we've had a few broods around, which is really nice. They sort of whir away across the stubble when you're walking the dog or whatever, which is great.
I've had a lot of messages saying that, you know, there's quite a lot of people talking about the number of wild birds around. I'm sure it won't make a hugely meaningful difference, but it's quite encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how many of them we manage to get over the guns come October, which is when I think we've got our first day.
Whose job is that in your family?
Well, this is an interesting point. We've got one of those shoots that has many leaders.
Oh, right.
So my dad thinks he's in charge. My brother is theoretically in charge. My mum is actually in charge. And this year we've got a chap called Jason who's doing some work on the farm, who's also done some gamekeeping in the past. And I think he'll think he's in charge as well. So we'll find out. One thing's for certain is I'm not in charge.
We're going to look forward to the update after your first day then. Hey, but talking of birds around, I saw a message in our Slack channel the other day that you've turned your home into a game farm.
Yes. So emboldened by the successful hatching of 3 chicken eggs earlier this summer, which I got because I had 3 batches of chickens foxed at 30 quid a bird or whatever it was, and I thought it was too expensive, so I bought some eggs off eBay, and 3 out of the 6 hatched. So I thought, I've got this nailed. So I then ordered some white pheasant eggs from eBay about a month or so ago, not really expecting any of them to hatch at all. And I ordered 6, 7 turned up, which immediately made me suspicious of how successful it was going to be. Anyway, 1 hatched.
So you've got 1 white pheasant.
1 white pheasant named Barry White, obviously.
Is this going down on the shoot?
Well, the initial idea was that I'd sort of slip them into the pens without my brother knowing. So that some white pheasants came out as a bit of a surprise. The trouble I'm having is that my wife seems to have decided that this is now a house pheasant.
I was about to say you've made that error already of naming it. The moment you name something, it's game over, isn't it?
So yeah, she's carrying it around the house like it's a child.
If someone shoots that, I remind me not to be around the day that happens.
Well, it's actually, I borrowed a system of fines because if Barry does end up on the shoot, which I think is going to be an interesting conversation between my wife and I don't want his life to be in vain. So I've borrowed something from Richard Crofts, their system of fines at Betis.
Yeah,
which is if you shoot at it and miss, you pay a fine.
Mm-hmm.
If you shoot at it and kill it, everyone else pays a fine. And if you don't shoot at it, you pay a fine. So ultimately, the best thing for you as a gun is that you're the one to take down Barry White.
So Barry could earn quite a lot of money for charity by the end of his days.
It'll all go to the GWCT. So what I'd really like is for somebody to miss him on the first 3 days. And I also thought, if you're the neighbouring gun, birds never go directly over one gun, right? So if you're one to the right or one to the left and you don't put your gun up, I'm fining you.
But the thing is, if Barry gets through the season, he could actually present the check to the GWCT for the amount of money raised of him being shot at.
Oh, goodness me, yes. I've got to keep the damn thing alive until then. And he's doing his level best to kill himself at the moment. He keeps jumping out of his box. I found him in the sink the other day.
That's a pheasant.
Yeah. So I've reinforced his quarters. Right, enough of that, Chris. Who's joining us today?
So today we have a British Olympic trap shooter who has been competing at the top level since she was 17. She's now also the owner of the Shotgun and Chelsea Bun Club, which a lot of you will be aware of, which is if you aren't, it's a ladies shooting club. She's a qualified shooting instructor who teaches all different levels of shot. She won the sport category at the Women of the Future Awards for her contribution to the shooting sport. with her achievements receiving recognition nationwide through media coverage, including articles in the Telegraph and interviews on BBC Sport. She's a very active ambassador for getting women into shooting and has also appeared on a Sky TV series, which I want to ask her about in a minute. A very warm welcome to Georgina Roberts.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem at all. It's great to have you with us.
Here, yeah. So are we going to ask about Sky TV now, Chris? I think we should.
Yeah, because I have to admit, I haven't actually watched it yet, although I have seen a clip. And so just go on, Georgie, tell us about this one.
I really struggled to watch it back. I'm not going to lie. I watched it through gritted teeth with a pillow covering my face. It was a brilliant day. They are very, very highly entertaining.
This is Rob Beckett and Ramesh Ranganathan for their show where they do going around sort of competing against sort of other activities and various different things in life.
So they did a Rob and Ramesh versus Team GB. And they took on, diving with Tom Daly, and they took on like shot put and heptathlon with Denise Lewis. So I had a real fangirl moment when they were on the same episode as Aaron Heading and I.
Amazing.
The filming was incredible. They are so funny in as much in real life as they are on TV. But some of the comments were a little bit not safe for TV. As that episode, we were trying to demonstrate the benefits of an Olympic sport. Obviously, Aaron was just off to Tokyo, and they had to edit a lot of the content out to make it safe for TV and public consumption. But it was so much fun, so much fun.
It's like this podcast, we have to cut enormous amounts of filth.
Not true.
Right. Well, yeah, it's great to have you with us, Georgina. Why don't we start things off for real and ask, what's that you're drinking?
I'm actually drinking a gin and tonic. It's been a hard day's training, but I've got a day off tomorrow, so it's definitely safe at this time of the day.
Oh, very good. Which gin have you got?
That's a good question. I actually don't. It's a random one. It's one I've never heard of. It's Three Wrens.
Three Wrens? I'm Googling.
Chris is a bit of a gin hound these days. He's got all excited about it.
It's only because by the time you've done however many episodes we've done, you kind of have to be. So Three Wrens is a gin distillery in Cheshire. The spirit of Cheshire, they say.
Interesting.
They do rum as well, all sorts. Looks lovely. How does it taste?
Beautiful. Nicely complemented by an elderflower tonic.
Oh, very good. George, what have you got?
No prizes for guessing. I'm on single malt Scotch whiskey again. I was thinking about having a glass of rosé, but it's actually turned out to be slightly chillier today than I was expecting. So I've gone back to what I know. So I'm drinking Aberlour single malt Scotch whiskey, and it's delicious as always.
How many times have you had that on the pod?
Oh, lots and lots.
You know that's not the aim of the game, George.
Yeah, I know, but honestly, I would have to start expensing the whiskies if I was buying new ones specifically so that I could have a different one on each podcast.
I would love to have seen you with a glass of rosé because it's just so different to what I'm used to that I think that's the route you've got to go down now.
Okay, next time I'll bring a glass of rosé then.
And when you say it's not warm enough, I know this summer's been rather ridiculous. We've just sort of dropped down to the boring heights of 23 degrees, which is now like not enough for you.
Exactly. Arctic.
Well, I've gone different as well this week. I always have beers or gin and tonics, really. And this week I have got a staple. I've got a glass of Good Ordinary Claret, which is a Berry Brothers own label red. And if you haven't had any of the Berry's own label stuff, they do a good Ordinary Claret, Good Ordinary White, Extraordinary Claret, which is really good actually, really good value for money. And a whole bunch of other ones like White Burgundy, which is another favourite of ours, just drinking wine at home. Anyway, so Good Ordinary Claret is what I've got. Very enjoyable. Nice, decent chunk of it as well.
Oh, yeah. Big old bucket full. Great. Right. So, Georgina, this next segment is the segment we call Whose Bird Is It Anyway? And it's where we ask our listeners to send in their shooting dilemmas and quandaries and queries and all that sort of thing. And we do our level best to offer them some helpful advice. Critics would say that we very rarely achieve that, but I think we can have a pretty good stab at this one. We always keep our are correspondents anonymous. So this one comes from somebody I've decided to call Ebenezer. And he asks, I wonder what you would do in this circumstance. I was invited by a friend of mine to join a 200 bird day, shooting 9 guns on a shoot new to me that, as it happens, was only about 25 minutes from home. Having happily committed and paid my 50% deposit up front, I received an email from one of the other guns who is organising the day, saying that he'd decided to have only 8 guns in the line and that it had turned into a 250 bird day. A double whammy on the money front, with no suggestion that he was doing anything other than demanding the extra cash rather than asking if the other 7 guns were happy. Not knowing the shoot captain well, I'm struggling to know how to address my frustration. Should I say anything?
Ouch. So let's do some quick maths to understand the implications of this, because he's talking about a double whammy on the money front. So if he's shooting a 200 bird day with 9 guns, that, using the census average of 45 plus VAT for this year, that's 1,200 quid a peg.
Right. Are you doing this in your head?
Always. I saw this correspondence and I made some prior notes just to make sure that I could, because this on the face of it. We're just going to shoot one less gun and we just shoot a few more birds. Sounds fine, right? But if you move to 8 guns and you increase the bag to 250, that's £1,687 per peg. So this guy has sent him an email saying, please pay up another 500 quid without any thought. So that's what he's essentially saying is his quandary, which is, I don't know him too well. I'm struggling to know what to do. He's asked for an extra 500 quid and I don't really feel comfortable with that. I could totally understand his issue.
Yeah. Georgina, what do you think?
For me, I think it depends how badly you want to shoot that day. Depends on the location of it and how long you've waited to shoot there, I guess. But I would say that £500 is quite substantial step with no correspondence. I mean, I'm an OT shooter, so we moan at if you want to put up a round of Olympic trap by £1 a round, that is a huge step for us. And that's a lot of commitment to keep shooting. So for someone to ask 500 quid without any emails is a bit steep.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So I know next to nothing about competitive clay shooting. But when you're training, how many rounds will you do in a day? And what's the cost of doing one of those rounds?
It very much depends on where you are in your cycle. So, for example, I'm off to the World Championships in the end of September. And before then, my training cycle is 2 weeks of technical work, 2 weeks of volume work, and 1 week of tapering. So in my 2 weeks of technical work, I might be shooting 5 or 6 rounds of 25 targets a day. In volume, I might be looking at 10 to 12 rounds per day. And in tapering, I'd probably be looking at, 2 or 3 rounds a day prior to leaving for the World Championships. So the costs do rack up pretty quickly because I'm probably shooting 4 or 5 days per week at the moment prior to those championships.
Goodness me.
So when they send you an email just sticking the price up, you reply back saying, hold on a second.
Yeah, excuse me. Do you mind? Do you know what? We are quite fortunate in that the ground that I do train at have been incredibly supportive, and they do a lot for me and cover a lot of costs for me. So that's at Nut Hampstead Shooting Ground, which is where I'm at now. But yeah, I think most grounds are looking at about £9.50 a round for 25 clays at the moment. So,
okay, I can see how that racks up, and you're doing it regularly. So with this guy here, if he's just had, let's assume he's not got many days in the diary like a lot of people this year, and he's had one email saying, hand over another 500 quid. George, what would you do?
Well, you don't want to give up the day, do you? That's like...
Well, the danger is you're going to lose that team for good if you just dish in the towel
there's that. But equally, it could work. The average number of days that people buy, according to census, is quite small. So it could be his one of 2 or 3 days he's got this year. You don't want to be losing 100 or 50% of your shooting for the year, but equally 500 quid is a lot of money. So I think you're going to have to do something clever. I think something like replying and saying, "Gosh, that's incredibly generous of you. Thank you ever so much. How can I ever repay you?"
To which he won't know what to do, because wording the reply to that's very tricky.
Yes, exactly.
The thing is, I think there's a lot of people that do this to their mates and maybe don't realise there's people like Ebenezer here who don't maybe respond how the person wording the email might have expected. Because I'm fairly certain my dad's done this to his mates when he just sort of gets carried away and thinks, right, guys, we're just going to shoot a few more, and so-and-so hasn't turned up, so we'll just share that amongst ourselves. And he's thinking, oh, I've pre-decided that in my head. I'm fine with that. But the other guns haven't, and he hasn't asked them. I'm fairly certain he's done that. And so I don't reckon whoever's done this to Ebenezer here is the first person at all. I reckon this happens all the time. But it is awkward, isn't it? It's a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. And I think like sensible advice, I think the thing to do is to, get in touch with your mate who invited you and say, what do you think about all this? And maybe canvass one or two of the other guns and see how they're feeling about it, just quietly.
Yeah.
And then, have a word with the shoot captain and say, look, this is a little bit more than we'd budgeted for. Can we either find a 9th gun or drop the bag down and, try and meet in the middle somewhere?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? You need to find out the motivations of the guy organising it. Like, if he just wants to shoot a bigger day and his mates and the other people don't, then that's an issue. But if you're on your own here and all the other guns have already agreed this because you're new to this group of guns, then yeah, you've got to go and find a mate who'll take your place or stump up.
Well, or actually, maybe you could find someone to share your peg with you if they'd let you do that.
Could do.
Because 125 bird days, perfectly adequate, isn't it?
So this is all very sensible advice which is unlike us. But to be, I do feel for him though. It's a tricky one, and with prices going up, I can see this happening more and more and getting more and more awkward. So I'm glad he's kind of said it.
Yeah. It's a weirdly useful bit of public service broadcasting that we've just done.
I feel like we should offer him an alternative as well. I mean, George, I think you should offer him the original price and Barry.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, but maybe.
If Barry becomes a even more valuable member of the family, his price is going to go up significantly.
He might be the most expensive pheasant in the country.
According to your wife. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'd quite like to know how Ebenezer gets on, if I'm honest. And I'm sure there's others who've been in this situation who've had differing outcomes. So it's one to let us know, please.
Yes. Right. Let's move on. Chris, what's the unpopular opinion this week?
So, yeah, we've had one that I'm going to tell you now is a bit of a rant. And it's from someone that George has called Edna, who writes, "Our sim days, which are the route into game shooting for a lot of new guns looking to progress from clay to game, encouraging poor etiquette and manners when crossing over to driven shooting." So that's the question which they've laid out, which is their opinion. But then it comes with a whole load of opinion attached to it, and I'll share this with you. "I feel they might be encouraging an unrealistic expectation of what a day's shooting is for the average person. Point number one. You are unlikely on a game day to shoot a slab of shells to a gun, which seems to be about the standard amount for a sim day. In the context of a game day, my workings of a 4-to-1 ratio, making that 62.5 birds to a gun times by a team of 8 equals a 500 bird day, which isn't what the average new gun would be doing. I also think that it could be encouraging poaching. It can be a bit of fun when shooting peg next to someone you know well to pinch the odd bird that flies over their peg. I completely agree with this as a bit of fun, but it very much depends on the relationship with the fellow gun and the type of shoot you're on. There's a lot of points coming, by the way. On a small day, you could rob someone of their only shot of the day, and small days are exactly where quite a few new entrants find themselves. It encourages shooting everything put over a gun and no selection, be it too low, a pillow casing, or out of range shots. An excess of drink seems to be creeping into the day. We've got someone who's not a fan of sim shooting, possibly an unpopular opinion itself. A bit of a drink during the day isn't a problem, but I've seen a few days that have been treated as an all-day session with a bit of shooting thrown in, which is A, not safe, B, no good for the reputation of our sport. Enjoy your day, then get into the pub for a session. Possibly worst of all, I've seen a small section that seemed to whoop and holler during a day's shooting even while standing on a peg. We're not American as far as I'm aware. Stone Island haven't branched out into a range of matching tweed shooting suits, and you're not attending Millwall away or on a stag or a hen do. Have some manners in capital letters. All of that said, sim days are great fun, and I appreciate new entrants to our sport are vital to its future. However, are we just bringing in a new generation of arrogant, drunk, greedy sportsmen and women more interested in getting smashed and wearing all the latest Instagrammable must-have shooting uniforms? Ouch!
Wow.
I feel sorry for his keyboard by the end of this. Oh, goodness.
That was a lot of points.
Yeah, you must have been on a few sim days.
I have, yeah. None quite as bad as that, though.
Well, I think Edna here. Edna, I can't decide if Edna's male or female. It sounds like a female. Anyway, George named Edna.
Names are randomly assigned regardless of gender.
So Edna here seems to have brought in every bad example he or she has ever seen on a day and brought it into one sort of suggestion of exactly this is how simulated shooting always is, which I think is a bit unfair.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't think they're doing it any justice at all. It's tricky. So I have seen some people on sim days who don't particularly have any safe gun handling skills or control of the gun. And I think that they do or can encourage people who aren't particularly experienced into that kind of shooting. Because I think a lot of grounds and estates do offer sim days for, novice or beginners, people who are just getting into it, if they have an instructor on the peg with them to make it safe, which is absolutely fantastic. But I think it's becoming increasingly more common that people will exaggerate their experience, so they don't have to have a nanny on the stand with them and they look slightly better than they are to their friends who are accompanying them on the day. I actually do think they're a good way of people getting into game shooting, because there is in my opinion, coming from a clay shooting background, there is a big jump in between clay and game. And that is a way for people to segue into that. It's not always accurate, but when you're trying to take the next step into stuff like that, you can't always find something that's going to replicate it perfectly.
As you say, though, there is a big jump in between clay and game. I suppose the real question here is, does the average person going on a sim shoot understand the jump between a sim shoot and game? And what Edna is saying here is that this is blowing the boundaries and it's causing lots of people to bring bad habits into game shooting. I don't know if that is actually the case. I suppose what she's saying, or he or she is saying, is that there is a risk of that happening.
Yeah, but I think this comes back, don't you think, to the conversation that we were having last episode about, certificates of competence or that kind of thing, where the point that Georgina makes is very valid, that actually the most important aspect here that isn't mentioned in this email is safety.
Surprisingly, I think every other aspect of shooting has been analysed in this email.
Yeah, I mean, he does mention safety in relation to drinking, doesn't he? But, sim days are meant to be a bit of fun. And I think that I don't think I've ever come across anybody who's sort of been out on their first game day and has acted as if they're on a sim shoot. Maybe I've just been fortunate in that. But I think that by and large, it's just, most people are so excited to go on their first game day. They'll almost certainly have been reading every etiquette article that can be found online before it, and they'll have been asking their mate who's asked them to go along, because it's normally an invitation, because you don't drop 600 to £1,200 on something without trying it first, kind of thing. So I'm not convinced of this argument at all.
Do you know what? Having initially felt like I was going to hound Edna for this opinion, I've just been thinking back to some days when I've joined groups of guns through, maybe when I've been invited on a day through Guns on Pegs or something like that. And I'm thinking that there are quite a lot of people maybe lacking the etiquette that we might have had 10, 20 years ago. And that's causing me to wonder where that's come from.
Yeah. What do you think about this hooping and hollering bit on the peg?
I don't mind words on the peg. I think standing in silence is. I think commending people like good shot and stuff like that. I think that's encouraged.
Yes, or indeed, why'd you miss that one, brother? Or dad, as the case may be.
Yeah, I don't. I think sort of commentating and shouting all the way through that. I have seen that once on a game shoot, and that's awful, in my opinion.
There was a West Indian cricketer in like the 70s or 80s who used to commentate on himself batting, just like under his breath. Or and he's stroked that through the covers for 4. Kind of used to drive the bowlers insane, apparently.
I'd love to hear someone 25 yards away commentating on their own shooting.
Hey, that's a podcast. We'll wire you for sound, Chris, next time you're shooting, and you can give us a blow-by-blow account.
That was a cracking shot. Yeah.
Mine would just be a long string of expletives, so I don't...
So the main point here is like, if you're going to shoot loads and loads of shells on a day and just blaze away at everything flying over because they're clays, Edna is suggesting that people will then just go and treat those pheasants as clays when they arrive on a game day. Do we think that actually is happening?
No, I don't think that does happen. And I think that as long as you're going on a sim day and, you're being, informed and educated about the differences, because the sim days I've been on have been very clear about, okay, it wouldn't be like this on the day. This is what you could expect, but this is what we're going to do today. This is the order of the day and how it's going to be run. I think that's fine as long as you are clear that, again, the etiquette is different. And I don't think that commentating on good shot or maybe not jumping up and down and screaming and stuff like that is, it would definitely put me off. But I don't think like that stuff doesn't matter as much on sim days because it is a bit more of a fun and a more relaxed environment, I think.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think that the point, if you then wind forward to the intro at the start of a game day, if you think about a shoot briefing on the morning of a game day versus a shoot briefing on the morning of a sim day, they're very different in tone, style, everything. Not necessarily deliberately, they just are, because we're dealing with live quarry. There's lots of things that can go wrong. There's lots of effort that has to go in just to even give you some shooting in the first place. I think that naturally that social awareness from guns comes across in therefore how they handle themselves on the peg. And I think if you then treat that game day like a simulated day, you need to go and look at yourself in the mirror because you've completely missed some valuable words that have been imparted already for you to then act like that, I think. So I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I think there is a risk of it happening with some individuals.
Very diplomatic.
I've changed my tune from when I first read it just before we came on air, where I was about to hop up and down.
Yeah, so what was his initial premise was he did ask a question, didn't he? But then proceeded to answer it.
Are sim days encouraging poor etiquette and manners when crossing over to trim and shooting?
Okay, so I would say they're not encouraging it. They're not going out there going, hey, you can go and do this when you go on a pheasant shoot. But it's important for people to understand that it is a different thing.
I think the question's wrong. It should say causing instead of encouraging.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think maybe it's important from an etiquette point of view on sim days, just to, as you said, Georgie, to point out this is not quite what it would be like. You'd be more like this, but it's a different thing. It's totally different. I don't think we should be comparing them that much.
Good. Right. So unpopular, yes.
Yeah, unpopular.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Right. Chris, have we got a shooting hero to talk about?
We do. My shooting hero is probably similar to a fair few other people out there. My mother. This is the first mother we've had.
It is.
So this one comes from Max, who's nominated as mother. He says, we have a family shoot doing 10 to 15 days a season. We're going to pick that one up in a second, George. My mother not partaking in the actual shooting, beating, picking up, nor gamekeeping, but fulfilling in my mind a much more important role. In the morning, Mum arrives at the lodge an hour before the guns to put on a full breakfast, organises 11s made up of the previous shoot's game for all the guns and the beaters. And then again in the afternoon, she lays on a full meal for all involved. She is more or less running a catering team of one throughout the season for nothing more than seeing the pure enjoyment on our family and friends' faces. I think a special thank you for all those included behind the scenes of the non-shooting aspect of the day is in order, as without these hidden heroes, the day itself would be nothing like it turns out to be. Hear, hear. Thank you, Max.
What a brilliant email. Yes.
How many
Excellent.
people have we seen out there like Max's mother?
Well, mine has been doing it for at least 37 years, as far as I know. My sister-in-law has now taken over the reins for quite a lot of that. But it's a hell of a thing to do. Can we just scoot back to the beginning of that email, though, before we go too full on in praise of mothers? Because I want to talk about this family shoot that does 15 days a year.
Does Max have any sisters? Because I've got mates that definitely want to join this family. Yeah, it's a good point, George.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a hell of a... They must have a hell of a place. But yeah, I mean, a very richly deserved shooting hero nomination, I think, or heroine, I suppose we should say. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. And seriously, my mum's been doing it for ages. My sister-in-law does it now. They do an amazing job. We don't do breakfast normally, but, coffees and teas and 11s and lunch. And there's if you've got 8 guns and they all bring another half of some description, sometimes there's kids in tow, mountains of washing up. It doesn't just end when everybody goes home at the end of the day. It's just, it's a serious operation, and hats off to anybody who's involved in doing that. And I'm sure that it's not just like family shoots, it's, DIY syndicates and all that kind of thing. There's normally, isn't there, one person who takes it all on?
Absolutely. Georgie, there must be a fair few people on your clay circuit as well who you kind of see like this, that are just always there helping out, doing their bit, just making the whole thing happen.
Absolutely. So there's so many elements to all kinds of shooting that goes on behind the scenes that's never really applauded. And the effort is monumental. There's so many people, coaches, mentors, especially in clay shooting, that really don't get the praise and the recognition that they deserve. So yeah, all mothers, fathers who take their kids around shooting as well, they all deserve a serious round of applause.
I imagine a lot of the roles in clay shooting are unpaid roles, in a sense of just trying to help people get there.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many people within all kinds of shooting who are truly for the sport, and they really do need to get some sort of recognition. And even for someone to stand up in organisations and say, okay, today we're going to celebrate X, Y, and Z, because they often don't get the thanks that they deserve, because the effort put in is, so great, and for so little reward other than just doing their bit, or as they perceive to be doing their bit for shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chris said at the beginning, you've been competing at the top level since you were 17.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's a lot of, days in the car for mum or dad, taking you to the playground, probably helping you with some of your kit financially, all that stuff. There's a hell of a lot that goes into it.
Well, go on. Put Georgie on the spot. Who's your shooting hero then, Georgie?
Oh, do you know what? It's such a good question. So in terms of the Olympics, I would probably go Kimberly Road, because she went to 6 games and got 6 medals, and you can't really argue with that at an Olympic standard. And I've got to obviously give a shout out to a British hero, although I would never ever say this to his face. Peter Wilson obviously won Olympic gold on home turf, and that is no mean feat. So yeah, to be able to do that in any country, let alone in GB, would be an absolute dream. So I will always look up to him for that.
So thank you for Max for sending this one in. Yeah, I think it really resonates. I can picture a lot of instances of I can picture a particular mate's mum handing out 11's sausages on the little farm family shoot, and it's the way that she does it with the smile on her face and gets such enjoyment out of everyone having a really good time that actually makes for the day. It's like when someone's really enjoying what they're doing, it makes the whole day so much more fun. So yeah, a particularly unpraised element of the game day. So Max is going to get himself a pair of garters, isn't he, George?
He is,
and so is Max's mother.
Yeah, and also Ebenezer and Edna and you, Georgina, are all members of the most noble order of the garters and will shortly be in receipt of your very own sets of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters. If you've got a shooting confession, a quandary, or a query that you'd like us and our guests to help you with, or if you've got an unpopular opinion and you'd like a set of these garters, do drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com.
So a quick update on garters. Georgie, just to put a value on these garters for you, right?
Okay.
So last episode, we had a very emotional story, which I struggled to read out, about a chap who sadly committed suicide, and his mates had sent him in as their nomination for a shooting hero. But the garters for the late Len Eden, who was the chap in question, were sent over to his mates. They had a charity auction just last weekend, soon after we recorded the pod. It was basically a fundraising event in his memory. And so they put his garters up for auction just to have Len's set of garters. And they raised 2,700 quid for Len's garters in the auction, donating obviously a huge sum to some great causes. Unbelievable, isn't it?
That's incredible.
I got a message from Josh late that night, and I had such a smile on my face. It's just so amazing to see that happen.
It is amazing, isn't it? And I think, so not only then, I mean, just to sort of be a bit facetious about it, not only are these the most highly sought after garters in the world, I would suggest, they're definitely the most expensive.
except for maybe Marilyn Monroe's garters, different type.
But I'm just waiting now for one of the big fancy gun brands to bring out their 3,000 quid garters in their next collection, with gold thread in them or something.
Georgie, can we request that these garters make their way in your bag to the next major shooting event?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then have a little photo.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome.
I'll definitely try and take some wellies with me as well, so they're not trainers. Yeah.
Garters and trainers in a competitive clay shoot. I like this. This is something that could catch on.
Brilliant.
So, Georgia, we got one last job for you. We've got the final bottle. We've been giving away a few of these bottles of Tim Madams's excellent elderberry port to award the best letter. And you've got to choose who it's going to be. So which of the correspondence? Is it Max about his shooting hero, his mother? Is it Edna about the particular rant about sim days? Or is it Ebenezer for the person who's been put in a predicament over funds to do with the day? Which was your most enjoyable bit of correspondence?
Do you know what? Although I did enjoy listening to the rant, I have to say that it's got to be the unsung heroes. It's got to go to Max and his mum.
Okay, I agree with you.
So do I.
Good. It's quite difficult not to give it to the heroes part of this segment, isn't it? Because it's the most heartfelt.
Yeah.
But so a bottle of Tim Madams's elderberry port, which is very good, is going to head to Max, and they can enjoy it on one of their 10 to 15 family days this year. So yes, that will be over in the post very soon. And also, if you want to get your hands on a bottle of Tim's elderberry port, just Google it, elderberry port, and then put in Madam's for free, and you'll get free postage on it. Links in the description.
Excellent. Right. So, Georgina.
Hello.
We've touched on it a little bit, but I thought it would be interesting just to get a little bit of background on your route into shooting from, childhood to where you are now. How did you get into shooting in the first place?
So my dad is a farmer. He's an agricultural contractor. He has always had a background in shooting. But like when he was trying to teach me how to drive, obviously teenage girl absolutely knew better, even though she'd never picked up a gun in her life. So that went downhill very quickly. But he did take me to a charity day over in Cheshire, and it meant I could have a day off school. So, of course, I went. And the lady who was running the beginner stand, a lady called Katie Cowell, and she was there with her dad, Royston. And for someone who had done very, very little, she and her dad thought I was okay and I had some natural talent. And they invited me to one of Katie's training days. I absolutely fell in love with shooting. I mean, I was a fangirling because she was shooting for GB. She was, wearing her kit on the day when I met her. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to refrain from asking her for a photo because that's really embarrassing. But it was a real pinch me moment that someone wearing a GB uniform thought I possibly had something. And I mean, reflecting back on that day, obviously, there's not very many young women who get involved with the shooting sport, especially in, teenage years. So I know for them, it was like an opportunity to introduce someone else. But honestly, it got me hook, line and sinker. I absolutely fell in love with it. And her dad took me under his wing and, introduced me to all the right people, took me to all the right competitions. And, from that day, I think it was 6 months before I got my first Welsh cap. And then within the year, I got my first GB cap as a junior. So it was a bit of a roller coaster.
Hold on. So 6 months from not picking up a gun to competing at that level?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Very impressive.
So they could tell straight away that you clearly knew which way around to hold a gun.
Yeah. They did obviously tell me don't hold the metal and you'll be fine. So I think for them, they saw I did have like a natural talent. But I think in comparison now, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, I don't have the natural ability of people like Nathan Hales and Steve Scott, annoyingly. But I do have the drive and the resilience to work bloody hard at what I want to do and what I want to achieve. Again, I'm going to mention Peter Wilson. I will tell him to his face. Peter is probably one of the most unnatural shots I've ever seen in my life. He's got no natural talent, but he will work so hard at, perfecting his skill. And that's why he was untouchable. And so I'm lucky that I do have kind of a little bit of both. But I think that they saw natural talent, and then I was able to give it 110% and really commit myself to it, which helped me get into it.
Absolutely. So what I'm thinking here is there's probably people listening to this. I'm imagining here sort of partners of maybe people that have forced their partner to listen to this podcast. And they're sitting in the car driving wherever, right? And they've probably not really shot before, but they could turn up to a shooting ground and find themselves in a similar position to you where someone goes, hold on a second, you're pretty handy. And then 6 months later, they're shooting at that level. And you're essentially, I imagine, saying to people, just go and give it a try.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you never know until you give it a go. And, some people do find the idea of shooting unnerving if they've never done it before. It makes a loud noise and, you've watched those horrible videos on Facebook of someone pulling the trigger and dropping the gun or them throwing themselves backwards. Those horrific WhatsApp group videos that people always send around. And that's really not what the sport is about. You can get involved with shooting at any age, and you don't have to be naturally talented. You can just work hard at it. But you can, people as young as 6 and 7 with adult supervision can, plink away with an air rifle. In Wales, we've got people in their 80s who are shooting for our super vets team. There is something for everybody. You can have stag doos, hen doos, and corporate doos, anything, in between, and you can find yourself at the Olympic Games if you do work hard at it. So if there is anyone that can persuade, their other half to come with them to a clay shoot, please pick up the gun and please have a go, because you will fall in love with it. The adrenaline will kick in, and you will find yourself just wanting to break clay after clay after clay.
This could be the most expensive episode anyone's ever listened to.
But I mean, you make a really good point. Well, both of you make good points there, actually. Like, my wife is fairly resistant to shooting. She's had a couple of goes. She's done some clays here and there, but it took a bit of persuading. Chris, I think I'm right in saying that Flo's not all that bothered either.
Which I quite like in a way. We talk about it all the time. It's nice.
But I think there's an undeniable imbalance. 5% of the people who respond to the game shooting census are female. I think it's about same sort of proportion in terms of shotgun license ownership. So where has this imbalance come from? And do you feel like there's what can be done, I guess, to address it? And like, is there anything that blokes can do about it, or would we be better off just keeping our noses out?
Blokes can do everything to change a narrative around it. So yes, actually, with the latest Home Office statistics that have come out, whilst the overall number of shotgun licenses having been renewed, or applications in general, has gone down, the amount of women who have got theirs has remained consistent, which is actually quite an achievement in itself. We are growing very, very slowly, and whilst I would like levels of participation to increase rapidly, it's a long game we've got to play, and so we do have to think about it carefully. And shooting as a platform is relatively small in comparison to other sports and other industries, so we do have to do as much as we can to widen the reach, approach different platforms, speak to different outlets who aren't targeting people who already shoot, because there's so many people who will tell me, congratulations, you're doing so much for your sport, you're writing for different publications and things like that. But all of the publications I write for, I'm preaching to the converted. They already shoot. We need to get out there and talk to people who have no background. They might not have any family who are involved in shooting. I know that was my route into it. All the people I know picked it up from their dad or their granddad or someone that they know. And so we really need to target those people who have got no prior association to the sport in any capacity. All of the blokes that do currently shoot, whether that's game or clay, if every bloke brought one female with them, whether that's their mum, their sister, their daughter, their wife, their girlfriend, and even if 10%, 1% of those women had to go and loved it, what a massive achievement for our sport, that we've got not only so many more people trying it and getting involved with it, and who have actually can say, oh yeah, I've had to go at shotgun shooting. Okay, it wasn't for me, but I had to go. That's great. But imagine those people who do fall in love with it and go, okay, I want to go again. Because we do have to increase levels of participation at all levels, whether that, all disciplines, all, game, air rifle, to actually make a big difference on a bigger scale.
I couldn't agree more. And I've always said, I'm pretty sure we've always said on this pod that that shooting is as strong as the number of people participating in it. And when you look at everything down to like how they're dealing with firearm and licensing, shotgun certificate renewals and things like that, just the number of people owning guns for these sorts of purposes, it's not the same argument as it is in the US, but it's so important that we get people taking part right from the start and then going all the way through if we can, because that's one of our biggest lines of defense. So I just want to go back a stage to Olympic trap, because I've seen this and I've watched it on TV, but can you just explain for those of us that maybe even I haven't actually done it, just give us a bit of an insight into Olympic trap?
Yeah, I can certainly try to. So first and foremost, please also search for it in YouTube and watch some Olympic trap finals, because I might not do the sport any justice by trying to explain it to you. But Olympic trap is basically, it's a trench that's dug into the ground, and there are 15 traps sunk into this trench. You'll have 5 pegs set about 10 meters behind them. And in front of each peg, you'll have 3 traps. You'll have a left, a straight, and a right. So when you stand on your peg and you call for the target, you don't know which one you're going to get. And then you'll shoot your target, you'll wait for the person next to you to shoot, and then you'll move on in a sequence like you would in other clay disciplines. But within Olympic trap, we have different schemes. So we have 9 different schemes that you can shoot, and all of the targets will be set to various heights and angles. So we'll have targets which are set up to 3 meters, 45-degree targets. Some of them will be 0-degree targets, and you don't know which one that you're going to get. It really is potluck. And some people can count them, so you won't know what you're going to get for the first 20. But if you've had 2 rights on peg 1 and you've had 2 lefts, you'll know that you'll get a straight for your last target. So people do work it out, but if you do confuse yourself, then it can be a very, very tricky thing to rectify.
So it's interesting because it's kind of standardized, but there's that element of randomness. I don't even know if that's a real word, but so it's not just a question of shooting the same thing over and over again. You do have to react and respond to the thing that comes out. Yeah,
you do have to have good reactions.
I really didn't appreciate Olympic trap was quite like this because one of my main gripes with clay shooting in general is it's a bit like golf, which I also do quite a bit of, which is just there's lots of the same, and I hate standing there and then playing a shot or having a shot at a clay knowing exactly where it's going to come from and things like that. I don't know why I've never tried this or done more of this, because this is exactly what I think would take a bit more of the excitement out. It's what George and I were referring to recently.
Yeah, we'll definitely get you converted to the dark side, don't worry. It's really something you do have to react to. I mean, the targets are traveling, they cover 76 meters and they're probably doing about 65 miles per hour out of the trap. So they're relatively quick. They are going a set of knots.
George wouldn't have a hope at this.
Oh, I'm quite good at snap shooting. It all goes wrong when I have to think about it.
I saw when I was flicking through your Instagram posts that Clay's Bar in London is one of your sponsors.
Yeah.
I had to give him a mention because it's quite an innovative concept, isn't it?
It definitely is.
We've been dying to go there. Our office is in London. Go on, tell everyone about that.
It's absolutely incredible. So the founder, Tom, his background is in renewable energy, and he went to a solar farm or a wind farm down in Somerset, and the guy who owned it also had a shooting simulator. So they were invited to have a go at it, and he thought, wow, this is really fun. Imagine if we did this in London, but introduced alcohol, basically. So he had this wild idea, and wow, does it work? So Clay's is a cocktail bar in Moorgate, 55 Moorgate if you want to go. It features 12 shooting pegs in a cocktail bar, and they use decommissioned coffs with 4 meter by 2 meter screens. And the pegs are filled with cameras, and the barrels of the coffs have got little LED lights drilled into them. So the cameras will track the movement based on those lights to sub-millimeter accuracy. And it is accurate. You do have to give them leads. You do have to treat them as real targets, because they are, again, traveling at a rate of knots and do simulate sporting shooting incredibly well. And they will catch you off guard, especially if you've had a couple of cocktails prior to starting.
Well, it's everything that Edna, our previous correspondent, wouldn't be happy with, but it sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. But I think because it's in such a different setting, it is very different. It's such a fun night out. And I think for me, the best thing that it offers is visibility when it comes to shooting, because there are so many people who would never, ever even contemplate going, shooting in real life, whether that's game or clay. But after work, it's a bar. It's, competitive socializing is becoming ever more popular. And people don't see it as taking part in a sport. They see it as drinks after work or a work night out. And there have been so many people since they opened in November who have been back week in, week out, wanting to have a go at shooting. And a lot of them have, gone on to have a go at shooting in real life. And they're really working hard with clay shooting grounds to put up prizes. So if you win their, latest competition, you will win a day with me at Holland and Holland.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
Which is fortunate or unfortunate. They'll have to decide. But they are doing a lot to support the sport, which is something I'm really passionate about.
I'm not surprised it's worked. You only have to look at the sort of success of Bounce, the table tennis one, and Flight Club, the darts one, also in London. It's the same sort of concept, just different sport. And they've been great fun.
I've always got to mention cricket at least twice in every podcast. There's a cricket one as well, where you can go and have a net.
I've done the golf one as well. Cricket, where's that?
There's 2 or 3 of them. There's one in London, there's one in Manchester. Yeah. And you've got the sort of bowling machine thing, and they play a video of Jimmy Anson coming in at you. And then you get points for hitting certain bits at the back of the net.
Office party. Done. Well, we've got to go to Clay's as well. Ironically, our designer posted it in our Slack chat yesterday, being like, has anyone been here? It's good to see it going down well. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yes. I just want to sort of bring in two things that we were talking about before. The first is the discipline that you shoot, which is Olympic trap. And the second is is female participation in shooting. I came to your event at the Game Fair on the Basque stand, and I think I remember you saying that, is it Olympic double trap that's in danger of being dropped from the Olympics because there's not enough ladies involved? Is that right?
It was dropped after 2016.
To tie into that, you've just bought the Shotgun and Chelsea Bung Club. So first of all, for those who don't know what it is, can you tell people what it is? But then also explain how that ties in with, I guess, what you might call your mission, for want of a better word, to try and reverse that trend, if at all possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Shotgun and Chelsea Bung Club, first and foremost, is a ladies' shooting club. It was established in 2011 by a lady called Victoria Knowles-Lax, who fell in love with shooting and our sport and couldn't find any women to go shooting with. So she invited all of her friends and bribed them with cake, hence the name, the Shotgun and Chelsea Bung Club. That was their bribe to get them along. And people caught wind of these events and decided, oh, I'd like to have a go at that. I'd like to come for a shoot, and then a bit of a catch up and tea and cake. And it turned into a bit of a monster over the years in terms of events and membership. And I was very fortunate that after COVID, it came up for sale. And it's something that has always aligned with my mission, which is to help increase levels of participation, specifically within women, but as a rule of thumb in general across both male and female. It's driven a lot of what I have spoken about at events in terms of motivational talks, and when I'm educating people about why shooting as a sport is important. And I do talk a lot about double trap. So for a bit of background on that, and why female participation is so important. The female discipline of double trap was taken out of the Olympic program after Athens 2004 because there wasn't enough women taking part. The male discipline was removed after Rio in 2016 because there wasn't a female discipline, because of course then it didn't fit in with their equality policy. Now, we were never given the opportunity to reintroduce the women's discipline. They just cut it completely. And there are so many women who shoot both Olympic skeet and Olympic trap over every country that's involved with shooting, have all said that they would have taken up double trap just to keep that discipline involved in the Olympic program. So I am really, really passionate about making sure that never, ever happens again. We won't lose any more disciplines due to lack of female participation, nor participation across the board. But that was a real driver behind me taking on the Shotgun and Chelsea Bung Club. So as a club, they have introduced over 22,000 women to clay shooting so far.
Wow.
Yeah, it's no mean feat. And it's my goal to help women continue to get involved with the sport, but also to help women take the next step within their shooting. So I was very, very fortunate that I had a pathway carved out for me by the people that kind of almost talent spotted me, so to say. And there are so many women who aren't in the same position as me. They didn't have the same opportunities or the same experience. And I'm really, really keen to help create those opportunities for other women who might not otherwise have them. I feel like there's a lot of women competing and, trying to get into the coaching aspect or even loading, who feel like they would like to take it more seriously, but they don't know how to, and they're not sure that they would be taken seriously. But for me, I've been very, very fortunate that every man I've ever come across within shooting has been incredibly supportive and bent over backwards to help me and my journey, help me get to the places that I've wanted to be. Almost sometimes, to a detrimental effect if they don't always know what they're talking about, but they're just so desperate to help that they want to give you some information. So you do have to grow a thick skin and really sieve out what is valuable and what isn't quite so valuable. But I think you do have to be a certain type of person to be able to believe in your voice and continue to use it and support other people. And I do think that there are so many women involved with our sport, and Claire Sadler is one of them. She is an absolutely incredible lady. She's the vice chair of BASC, for those who don't know. And she has done so much for me and for the Shotgun and Chelsea Bun Club. And she was, the fighting force behind the relaunch at the Game Fair, which was absolutely incredible. But we need to do more to kind of use our voices and shout about, getting more women involved and, as athletes and as coaches. And that's one thing that I really, really do want to do.
So presumably you've got events lined up and all sorts, and you're essentially looking for people to go on and join you at those events, ladies.
Yeah, so it's a membership-based business, and our members will get a whole heap of benefits, from discounts at events to discounts off cartridges, off some shooting grounds, off outfitters, businesses like that. But we're also creating a progression pathway. So if you want to get into clay shooting, just have a go. Perfect. We can help support you do that. But if you decide that you want to go on and shoot for your county, for your country, for Great Britain, we will also help you do that. So we will help you, connect you with the people who will be able to support you, whether that's a county coordinator or an organisation. So if you need insurance or you want to be able to shoot a registered competition, that would be CPSA, or insurance, you'd want CPSA or BASC or, other providers. Or if you wanted to go on and shoot for Great Britain, you'd need to know British shooting. And the format and the process for all of these different selection shoots, every discipline is different, every county is different. So it's just about creating a hub for women who are scared to, ask questions that they deem as being stupid. There are no stupid questions, but there are some people out there who don't want to ask the questions. So, we're creating a safe space for them to find out those answers without having to stick your head above the parapet. And with the events, we, are now offering a range of different events. So I'm repackaging the events that have been run previously to Shoot and Social. So they're really targeted at people who want to meet like-minded women. They want to, fall in love with the sport and learn, but they also want to really enjoy the socialising aspect of the sport. We've also teamed up with some of the UK's best female coaches. Cheryl Hall is our resident sporting coach, and she is a sporting hero. And Katie Paulson, who shot skeet for England. She, again, an incredible shot and a fantastic coach. And they're going to be helping us run a series of Have a Go days and coaching clinics. So I'm targeting each discipline separately with the Have a Go days. So we'll focus on the core disciplines, so sporting, skeet and trap. But within those disciplines, there are so many variations of that we really need to address. So if you go to a sporting Have a Go day, you'll have a go at sporting, fit ask, sport trap, compact, and we'll talk you through those, the process behind it, the format, how they work. You'll get to shoot them. And the same with skeet and trap. You'll try all of the trap disciplines. You'll try English skeet, Olympic skeet, skeet doubles, and really, educate people about what they are and how they differ. But I never knew that anything existed beyond game and sporting when I first started. And so again, I just want to open up those doors for people who otherwise would have no clue that these disciplines existed, because then they have the opportunity to fall in love with one and then move on and find a coach, come to one of our coaching clinics and get really, really good at that one discipline that they've fallen in love with.
Sounds like George and I need to attend one of these.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I'm sort of dimly aware of Fit Ask and sporting and all these other things, but really, I don't know what the difference is between most of them. I know that there's lots of little technical details and lots of little stylistic things, but yeah, I mean, I'd imagine that most game shots are pretty ignorant of the different disciplines that there are within clay shooting, competitive clay shooting. There's a hell of a lot to get your head around, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be really, really overwhelming. I mean, I'm a professional shooter, and if I go to a sporting shoot or Yeah, anything out of the ordinary for me, I forget that you have to take more than one box of cartridges with you, or you have to take a kit bag full of water and snacks for the whole day. And it's a bit like, oh, what is this? This is really strange. So for someone that's just getting started, I can only imagine what they must be thinking. So it's just a way to help people really find their feet within it.
I can imagine it's going to continue to go from strength to strength, because you can absolutely see the way you've described it, the place it has.
Yeah, thank you. And someone actually posed a really good question the other day, which was, why ladies shooting? Women have worked so hard to get their vote. We've worked so hard to be equal. Why are you segregating now? And to that, I've always said, there absolutely shouldn't need to be a place for ladies shooting. It should just be shooting. It was only shooting when I first got started. There were no ladies groups or events that I could go to. And, that's a real shame, because I didn't get to shoot with any women. And there were some women that were incredibly competitive, who potentially saw you as a threat, so you weren't always welcome.
Goodness.
And that has changed now, completely changed, which I'm very grateful for. But you did have to have a thick skin. And I can see why that can be off-putting to women, as they're entering the different disciplines. And so until we're at a point as a sport where we don't need to have lady shooting events, then there will always be a place for them. Because even if there's a ladies event or group or club which introduce 5 women per year to the shooting sport, what a huge success. That's 5 women who have got into our sport that wouldn't necessarily have got into it otherwise, because it's a more welcoming or slightly less daunting environment for them to find themselves having a go at it. They often feel like women won't be as judgmental. In my personal journey, I have found that the men who have been involved with my journey have all encouraged me wholeheartedly. And there are some women who fortunately don't get the same experience. So until we can ensure that everyone has a positive welcome, there will always be a gap for lady shooting events and clubs.
I completely agree. I'm glad you said that, because I understand why someone would raise that in this day and age, but I think that's going too far. I think you're absolutely right in the way that you summarise. There is a need for it. Anything to try and make something more enticing, or have options, at least just to try and get people in it. As you said, that's the mission overall.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Georgie, the way that we like to end these podcasts is with a segment that we call Desert Island Shooting. So this is, imagine that anything to do with shooting, and in this instance, all clay shooting, is about to be banned the day after tomorrow, and you've got one last day. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Who would it be with? Who would you have with you? All the rest of it. Just money's no object. Transport's not an issue. I mean, our last guest decided that time wasn't an issue either.
Yes, he decided that the laws of physics no longer applied for 24 hours.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
You could do anything you want. What would you do?
Oh, do you know what? That's a very good question. And I feel like I'd like to have more than one option for this.
Go for it.
Absolutely. There's no rules.
Go for it. Perfect. So first and foremost, I would have to say, so it would either have to be Bob Braithwaite or Peter Wilson at London 2012. That would be absolutely incredible to be able to go to such a prolific game.
So you're going to go back in time for one of your options?
Yeah, you said physics doesn't count, right?
No, you're absolutely right. I'm just wondering, George, have we had back in time before?
Well, I was thinking the only person who has who's suggested something like that, I think it was Mike Robinson, said he wanted to go hunting in Africa with Ernest Hemingway, which would definitely require either some sort of
resurrection
or time travel. So whether you want to go divine or scientific is one way or the other.
Okay, great. So you'll go back to London 2012 to recreate that moment.
Yeah,
that's fun. I like the idea of that.
Well, we'd recreate it to some extent. I'd want it to be me winning a gold medal, but Pete would be allowed one too.
Okay, so one of your options is that you are going to win a gold medal on your last day. I like that.
Yeah, of course. The second one would actually be a day with Annie Oakley. I think she was 1900s.
Oh, the Wild West gunslinger lady.
The Wild West gunslinger lady. Her, I think that would be a fabulous day.
Well, I think that's one of my favourites, actually. Favourite desert island shooting for quite a long time. Proper variety, proper ambition. Really nice. I really like it. What I really like about the winning, it's the last ever day of shooting of any description, right? So if you win the gold medal, that means you are the champion forever.
Yeah, no one can ever take that away from you. You are the reigning champion.
And on that note.
Well, yeah, I mean, Georgina, it's been really good fun. Thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Georgina. Yeah, really good.
Right. So before we go, as per usual, there is one final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the highly exclusive and extremely expensive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas for us to resolve, or by sending us your unpopular opinions or nominating a shooting hero. Just send us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we read it out in the next episode or any future episode, we will send you some garters. We will be back. Well, actually, Chris and I are both off on holiday for a week or so, but we'll be recording again when we come back. So there'll be another episode not too long after this one goes out. But until then, thanks very much for listening and goodbye.